So in this video, we will unify player and AI aiming. What that means is that we will end up with the top section of this diagram finished, so that regardless of whether it's the player or the AI possessing the tank, they will call the same aim@, method. And then what that will mean is that we can actually log out these three AI tanks are aiming at me, my player, the player position, and we are aiming at, well, whatever we fancy, really. So let's dive in and get it going. Okie dokie, so we are ready to get this whole top section working. We have a tank AI controller. It's going to be pretty easy to organize for it, to aim at the player. We have a tank player controller, and we have just spent loads of effort making sure we know what this world space is here. So in either case, we're going to aim at a particular world space, whether it's the player's world space or whether it's the world space that the crosshair is pointing at, and we're going to send that to the tank. And there's going to be an aim@, method, as we can see here, on the tank. So first thing to do is to make that aim@, method on the tank. That's pretty simple. If you want a mini challenge for yourself, go ahead and do it now. I'm going to just do it anyway. By the way, all these things should have been private in here because they don't need to be public. So for the first time now, I'm going to make a public section and ask myself the question, is it reasonable for a tank to have a public method called aim@? I think it is. The public part of these classes is the most important thing. It's the contract. It's the external view of the tank. But I think it's perfectly reasonable to have a void aim@ f vector hit location. In this case, we kind of mean the location of the thing we want to hit, but it is also the hit location formerly from the line trace that we did in the tank player controller because we are wanting to hit the thing that our line trace hits. So aim@ f vector hit location, cool. Let's go ahead and implement that inside the tank. I think I'll do it down here. We need an atank : to qualify the class. And then we come in here. Now we're not actually going to do the aiming now. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take the log entry from here and from the tank player controller CPP, and I'm going to replace, well, let me put it in where it wants to go so I don't lose my copy buffer. So I'm going to pop it in there. I'm going to make the call here, though, from the tank player controller. So instead of the to-do that is tell control tank to aim at this point, we want to get controlled tank, and we have protected that access here. And then we want to say aim@, and then we want to say hit location. Okay, so we're just going to pass it from the tank player controller through to the tank. So in terms of our fancy diagram, that is this right-hand side here. We're aiming at the thing the crosshair is pointing at, and this is where it finally gets called. So over on the tank, we're going to want to log this out. Now, I'm going to want to log a little bit more than this. I'm going to want to know which tank is aiming at what. So I'm going to say something like this, %s, aiming at %s. Okay, and then we're going to insert into here the tank name. So auto tank name equals, now what is tank name? So let's be clear on this. R tank name. So this is the current name of the current tank, which is just get name. Now if we look at get name, we can tell the type by looking at what auto comes out as. It comes out as an F string already. So we just need to say comma star R tank name comma hit location. So it's going to say the tank name is aiming at whatever the hit location that's been passed in at. So we're just reporting at this layer down here, the tank, what I'm receiving. And we're going to do this both for the tank player controller, which we've just done, and for the tank AI controller, which, you guessed it, you're going to be doing. So we want you to get the tank AI reporting the aim. Just before we go into that, though, I want to prove, just check that it works, that what I've set up for you works for the player controller. And also that'll give you an idea as to what the correct output is if you get this challenge right. So just compile what I just did up. And what did I just do? In case it all flicked by your eyes too quickly, I made an aim@, event inside the tank CPP, and then inside the tank player controller, we did this, get control tank aim@, hit location. So that's what we did. Now, did we compile? I think we did. Play. Cool, look, so that's that same aim@, but it's fully qualifying the tank name. If I depossess or Shift F1 to get the mouse out, I can see that we are, if I click on us, tank BPC_32. So it's just fully qualifying that we are aiming at, and then it's giving us a world space location. What I want to happen in your challenge, I want every frame, I want 3 logs or 4 logs, however many AI tanks you have plus 1. Each of these AI tanks is going to say me, i.e. tank BP2_183, aiming at, and then my location, either player location. So all 3 of my tanks will report the same aim location. So every frame will get 4 logs, the 3 AI tanks aiming at the same place, and then one other, which is this tank aiming at whatever the mouse is pointing at, or the cursor's pointing at. So hopefully that makes sense. I shall formalize it in a challenge slide, add a tick method into the tank AI controller class. You should be able to do that by now. Call tank aim at every single frame. You're going to need to get the player tank as well, and make sure you protect that access, protect the pointer. And you should get 3 logs per frame now. Actually, you should get 4 logs per frame, 3 from the AI and 1 from the player. So go ahead, pause the video and see if you can get that done now, by the way. By the way, why did I say that? I didn't need to say that. Anyway, you can't hear this because the video's paused. Wait, you probably can because you probably just unpaused it. Anyway, did you do the challenge? This is the important thing. All the learning happens when you do the challenge. So please, really give it a go. If you can't do it, it's the trying that's going to help as well. Okay, wicked. Let's go and show you how I would tackle this. So the issue here is over on the tank player AI controller, the tank AI controller. We need to get a tick into the tank AI controller is the first thing. I think I'll start in the header file, actually. So private, yep, that's right, begin play. So virtual, void, tick, float, delta time. And now again, you could see this from the tank.h if you wanted to. Or delta seconds. Actually, doesn't matter what you name the parameter here in the header file. Override, because we want to make sure that we're definitely overriding a superclass method. And then let's copy all that. Or I could be bold and copy it from the tank CPP. There it is. Called every frame. Pop that into the tank AI controller. It's the AI controller that we now want to tick. If you're going to copy from another class, remember to change the class name here. Remember to call super, which we have done now. Then we want to think about what we're doing. Well, the first thing we want to do is say, do we have a player tank? So we need to say if get player tank. If we don't have a player tank, then we don't want to do anything this frame. It makes no sense to do anything without a player tank for the AI controller. It's kind of a lemon unless there's a tank to aim at. So in general, in pseudocode, what are we going to do every single tick? This is an important bit of code here. Well, we're going to move towards the player. We can't do that yet, so we leave it as a comment. We could do it as a to-do, though, because it's something we're going to actually add later. We're then going to aim at the player. Well, let's just write it as code for the moment. Aim at the player, or aim towards the player. Start aiming towards the player. And the third thing we would do is fire if ready. What we're interested in is this aim towards player bit. So how do we do that? Well, we are going to get the controlled tank. Remember, it's the controlled tank, not the player tank, because if we look at the architecture, the AI controller is possessing this tank here. So we're inside this AI controller saying, get me the controlled tank. So it's the tank that the AI controller is possessing we're interested in. Get the controlled tank. And once you've got the controlled tank, it will now have an aim at method on it, won't it? Regardless of whether it's a player's tank or not. And then what are we going to aim at? Well, we need to get the player tank. And then we need to just get the location. Get actor location should do it. There you go. Does that make sense? We tell the control tank to aim at the player's location in English. Cool, let's try it. Let's see what happens. Compile complete. Oh, look at that. Lots of stuff on the log. Let's pause it. Take a look and make sure this log stuff makes sense. So tank BP569, I can see that here. It's aiming at 107. Is that where we are? Yeah, it's going to be where our tank is, I believe. Which tank are we? We're none of them because we're not playing anymore, but it is where we would have been. It's pretty much exactly. We started at roughly the origin. Okay, the player start point is at 240. And the actual origin of our tank when it spawns, if we depossess, is probably slightly different. Which one are we? We're this one here, 0-ish, 0-ish, 107. It's good enough. There's a little bit of collision physics or the way this land's moving it. So this tank, this AI tank, is aiming at us. In fact, all of the AI tanks are aiming at us. And the only anomaly is this this tank C35, which was the player tank, and that value will keep changing. So if we look at this, most of those values should be stable. You can just about see it as they flick past. And then as we move the viewpoint around, the player is reporting a different position. Great. So that means that everything is working through a unified interface. The tank regardless of whether it's controlled by, who it's possessed by, an AI or a player, is on equal grounds. They're both calling the same aimat method. And everything that happens from there on in will be the same for the player tank and the AI tank, meaning the AI cannot cheat and cannot get an advantage. And we don't have to duplicate any code. We don't have to play test or balance the tank's behavior against the player's behavior, anything like that. It's really equitable. The tank and the player's tanks will move and aim in the same way because they're using the same API, the same aimat call. So that's it. That's pretty cool. I think I'll just leave a bit of code on the screen for you just for fun. And anything else you need to do, just rewind and take a look at it. So see you soon, and well done.